Welcome back to Air Quality Matters. I'm Simon Jones, and coming up, a conversation with Mikael Börjesson, Future Solutions and Public Affairs Director at Swegon Group. Mikael works at the intersection of innovation, sustainability, and public policy, with a focus on indoor environmental quality, low carbon building solutions, and EU regulatory frameworks. He has deep roots in the sector with vast experience in stakeholder engagement, industry collaboration, and policy advocacy at both national and European levels. What led to this conversation was something I caught him saying earlier in the year about the direction of travel for Swegon and sustainability. So I wanted to talk to him about what sustainability means to a large manufacturer in this sector in 2026. How do European organisations see the landscape, and what are the kinds of things they're doing today to keep the wheels moving? The European ventilation sector were early movers as a collective on things like environmental product declarations. But as the sector and this space has matured, what does it look like today? How are the big players seeing this topic mesh with the healthy building space, indoor environmental quality, and the implementation of things like the energy performance of building directives? Also, to be frank, I was a little curious to find out how future solutions and public affairs mesh as a job role. This is a really interesting conversation with an important player in the healthy building space, and from the perspective of someone right at the beating heart of change. Don't forget to check out the sponsors in the show notes and at airqualitymatters.net. This is a conversation with Mikael Börjesson.
Sure.
And I thought it'd be a really fascinating kind of overarching question to ask you about what we think sustainability looks like for a big HVAC or ventilation manufacturer in 2026, because it's a very different place than it was perhaps in 2021, right?
Yes, it's been a great change, I would say, mainly driven by market activities, more market demands, and in reality, I mean, in this industry has been working with sustainability since it was born, more or less, because we have said we would like to make healthy environments, but as energy efficient as possible. And energy efficiency has been, I mean, on the target for everyone. At least as long as I've been in the industry, and that's quite many years now. The challenge now that comes into play is we need to look into the built-in carbon, the built-in cost, sustainable cost, which is another driver that could be contradictive, or it could be supporting the energy efficiency kind of drivers. So that kind of demand of thinking in another way and realizing that there is a cost to install modern HVAC equipment from a kind of CO2 perspective, a built-in CO2 perspective, is I would say new in a sense that we haven't counted it in that way. I mean, every manufacturer that works with HVAC equipment always are interesting to lower the cost or lower the amount of materials, etc. But more from an internal cost base. Now suddenly we had a external cost, so to speak, on the material we use as well. So in that sense, it's been a huge change because there is another bill to be paid or to be maybe shown in another way. So that I mean, we have spent hours on this, the latest maybe 3 years, to realize how our impact is on the kind of built-in performance, built-in CO2 footprint performance, and be able to actually show that in a transparent and trustworthy environment. We of course know the kilograms of our products, the kind of material we used, but to calculate the CO2 footprint has been very valuable for us. We have realized where we do have the drivers regarding CO2 footprints and what we can do about it. So it's a different game, but it's a very interesting game because at least I would say it's not all over Europe, but there is definitely countries or member states that goes in the forefront regarding the built-in CO2 for especially new buildings. And that drives the market, but we also see that we have market actors, investors, contractors that even drives this harder than the legislative demand is on the market. So it's been really a cooperation together with the end customers in the end, and the one who actually builds and owns the building. And that's been very, I would say, in one way challenging, but also very fruitful because we have not get to know each other much better than we did before, and realizing where we can play and where we can make a difference together.
Yeah, and designed to be that way. So my apologies, but it's because there's so much in there to unpack, isn't there? But like when we think back, and I was noting one of your first comments that ventilation and HVAC has been talking sustainability for a very long time.
Yeah,
and that's natural because we're involved in the broader aspects of sustainability, the delivery of healthy environments and fresh air. We consume primary energy. We've been part of green buildings for as long as green buildings have been around. So at a surface level, certainly for 10 or 15 years in brochures at the very least, and sustainability manifestos, and CSR or whatever it's called in one particular country or another, sustainability has been there and talked about. But that's a very long way from where we are now, where it's, as you say, it's an accounting thing. It's a fundamental business proposition. And there are, I noted kind of three principal drivers there. You've got the requirement of the built environment for sustainable products. We've got the requirement on companies to be sustainable. So particularly in Europe, if you're a business above a certain size, there are certain reporting obligations you have around your sustainability. And then increasingly, we've got the markets taking note of that, and access to finance is very much linked to the sustainability of that business, both the sustainability from a green perspective, but also a climate resilient sustainability from an investment risk perspective.
Absolutely.
So
totally agree.
It's a totally different landscape in that. It's almost night and day, in fact, isn't it?
Yeah,
between the start and where we are.
It's suddenly not a matter of having fresh air into the building. It's a matter of how the financial figures can be accounted for in the beginning or in the end of a project. I mean, this started a number of years ago when the taxonomy was a little bit launched, and suddenly we have financial investors starting to ask for quite detailed technical answers. Based on that, they try to understand the financial value of doing projects in a certain way, or investing in a certain area. I mean, HVAC is I think we are climbing a little bit on the ladder of importance, but I mean, if you're looking 10, 15 years ahead, we were one of the minority part of a project. There were so many other things that was determine the costs, the final outcome of a new build. Now we're realizing more and more that we have a financial impact, we have a carbon footprint impact, and suddenly we are becoming interesting to talk to already very early in projects. And I think that's as you say, change the game field. The game is different today. I'm not sure everyone recognize this yet, because I think it's for the moment it's a little bit according to the matter of size of companies for the moment. I think the big players, the big investors are really keen on going this road, and by that the big players also in the HVAC field follows and respond to that demand. I'm not sure if you go to small middle-sized companies that they are feeling this so clearly yet, but they will. It's a matter of time. And you will also probably find different answers regarding in which geographic kind of surrounding you are working, in which country come from, how actually this has been targeted yet or not. So it's still a very scattered market, and that makes this even more complex, because in some markets we're still doing the more traditional way of doing business, and in other markets we are moving ourselves in a total different position regarding the decision maker, the investors, etc. So yeah, it's very interesting. It's a fun situation in one way.
Yeah, and to unpack that a little bit, when we talk about the differences in regions or in particular markets or
Yep.
particular types of buildings, how do those conversations manifest as different? Is it an oversimplification to say there's a traditional way of doing it where it's about efficiency and cost and value and the things that were the traditional determinants of whether you won a project or not, and then more sophisticated markets that are now looking at the full life cycle cost of products and the embodied carbon and asking much more complex questions about what you bring to that party? Is that an oversimplification?
Yeah, I think it's
that's what that looks like.
In one way it's an oversimplification, because the traditional values will always be there in all the markets. I mean, cost will always play a role. What we can see is that I always talk about. I mean, the traditional business comes from you have one wallet of money. You would like to achieve something, a good indoor climate, good ventilation, right temperatures, etc., and you have a wallet to pay from, and you would like to pay reasonable amount of money for that to come true. Suddenly you have two wallets. You have one for making that happen, but you have another wallet also to achieve the sustainability goals that either are legislated in your country or is a market demand. And suddenly you have two budgets to fulfill. The sustainable budget needs to be fulfilled, and there you're counting, in the end you're counting money there as well, but you're counting footprint or CO2 equivalent or whatever you would like to measure it. And then in the first wallet you always counted it into costs in reality. But the more mature the investor or the market are, the more those are balanced to each other, and they play. I wouldn't say they play equal roles, but they play a more. The sustainable wallet plays a more specific role in those markets, and will have an effect in the choice you will make in the end.
Do you find those conversations, as you start to bring in the complexity of things like embodied carbon and so on, become more sophisticated conversations, that it isn't just a binary decision on cost and value, that you're starting to take in factors? And can that be healthy then for the broader conversations we have to have around ventilation about its potential impact on health and community and all of the other things? So if you start to have these more rounded whole conversations about the value a particular product brings, is that helpful for the broader scope of ventilation?
I would say it is, and it creates another type of argumentation and discussions, because suddenly you are interested, of course, in the cost of the installations you do, and then you're suddenly talking to the one who actually pays for it, which is very seldom in a traditional chain of command kind of situation. And there, of course, you can start to dialogue. What are your expectations? What if you would like to have a very low CO2 footprint? Okay, what can we do? How can we solve that? But in cooperation with that, you would like to achieve something. Either it's a temperature qualification, and air quality qualification, and suddenly you start to dialogue something with people who are never actually talked about indoor climate or the use of ventilation in the end. Because there is a backside of this discussion, of course, that the harder the pressure will be on the CO2 footprint discussion. An easy choice is to install less installation, to use less components, to simplify it, etc. And that's why it always goes to the discussion: what are your demands in the end? What are your requirements? What would you like to achieve? And then you're realizing that you cannot skip a ventilation unit, you cannot skip a radiator or a diffuser or even a sensor or whatever, because that is needed there to fulfill your demands. Okay, so let's do it is as smart as possible with as low impact as possible. And that dialogue has been very hard to carve out earlier, because it has always been a discussion of, no, I'm the investor, but I have a designer doing the HVAC design, and then we have an installer who does the installation, and then we might have a sub-installer that is doing actually the physical installation. So has been very distant to the investor side. Suddenly, the investor side is super important. It's interesting, actually, what you're putting there, what cable you are using, or the duct that you would like to put in there, or the sensor, or because that is a cost that will show up in the end. So I'm not saying it's black and white. It's a kind of grayscale, of course, and it depends very much on the investors. But suddenly there has been another type of dialogue that will hopefully makes I'm not sure it will make life easier, but if for sure it makes it more relevant. We will probably, in a better way, support the investors, because I mean that's my take all the time. The technology to do smart installations are there. I mean, there's a lot of manufacturers with a lot of good stuff to achieve healthy, smart, good indoor energy efficient indoor ventilation. But I'm not sure we are utilizing the full capacity all the time. But if we can start those dialogues, we can probably tailor-made projects much better and smarter, and in that way win also the sustainable footprint kind of dialogue.
And what I think is really interesting about these conversations with both organizations and the supply chain is that, in general, is that there's an honesty that has to be brought to bear a little bit once you start to understand fundamentally what you're talking about. You know, embodied carbon, scope 3 emissions, circularity, all of these kind of things that float around. When you actually get into the weeds of it, there's these wonderful contradictions that you can't escape, and so that you have to talk about the elephant in the room, which I think is very cathartic if you're in that space, but it's also requires an honesty of effort. I mean, the big one is the big C, you know, consumption. The reality is if, like all businesses, Swegon, like all real estate, that our job is to create great big things.
Yes.
right? And lots of them, and grow. And there's a every business chart in the world has a kind of a left to right upward trend in theory of growth, right? Which we know is inherently unsustainable. That there isn't an organism on the planet that can grow forever, right, and live forever. It's just that there's natural laws at play. So when you start to create things, the most sustainable thing to do is to not build something in the first place,
Yes.
right? So there's these wonderful contradictions that you have to address and say, well, look, okay, if we're going to make something, there are some fundamental logics we've got to bring to bear. Can we use elements that are more energy efficient or less embodied? Can this product be reused at the end of its life? Is it produced in a way that makes that impossible? There's all these once you start going down that rabbit hole as a business, it's fascinating because it makes you take a serious look at the fundamental structures of the business. And I think we've seen that across Europe, particularly for companies that have been mandated to start reporting on scope emissions and things like that. It's been a hard road, hasn't it? For
yes,
a lot of people,
and it becomes complex because I'm touching into two things that you said. First of all, if I touching into the consumption, because you're totally right. I mean, we have invested, as I said earlier, heavily in being transparent of the CO2 footprint, the kind of CO2 cost from our product point of view, and of course that is a cost for all installations that we do, and that doesn't matter which manufacturer you are. You always have a cost. There is material somewhere. In reality, anyway, the consuming part is probably, if you have products that are consuming electricity, the consuming part stands for like 90% if you do a life cycle analysis. So it will always be super important to be energy efficient. And we cannot forget that. So no matter what we do, we still need to have multiple thoughts in our head at the same time. So we can optimize, we can choose smart solutions, but we cannot sacrifice the usage phase on the altar, so to speak. That has to come in first, and then we should do as smart installations and use as smart materials as we can, because that is the beauty of it, that we need to start to think about how we actually manufacture things, what kind of resources we use, what kind of virgin materials we are using, etc. And then it comes into play what you mentioned now, which makes this super complex. We're talking about reuse, remanufacturers, making a circular economy out of an industry that has been very much designed to be install, use, and waste, and maybe reuse materials in the best case, which is used quite widely. We are using steel in many ways in this industry, which is quite easy to reuse as a material, which is one way good. But if you can reuse products or components, it's much better. The product with the lowest CO2 footprint is the one that is never replaced, that is reused again and again and again. And there we see there you see complexity somewhere, because I see innovators, I see market demands asking for different materials in products. So we're looking into cardboard, or we're looking into wooden constructions. You can easily Google and you will find a kind of overwhelming amount of ideas of how we can replace steel, which is fantastic in one way. And I, going back to my work, finding innovation and innovative idea, I super investing my time there. But on the other side, a product that is maybe made of steel today can probably have a second life or maybe a third life, because the steel will not be weared out. It will be maybe the electronics that been weared out, but then you can replace fans, you can replace insulation material or whatever. And there we see a market, and then that is quite. Now I'm going back to my own company, Swegon, where I work. That is quite disruptive. We have already now started in our air handling unit parts a reuse division that actually are so in reality it could make fewer air handling units because we are reusing those who are really installed and remanufacture them on site. And that's creating a super high interest, maybe even more than we even thought about from the start. So there is a transition somewhere in the industry where we every installed product, no matter who has manufactured it, is a resource in reality and could eventually be reused. Not all of them, for sure. They could be broken or whatever, but there is a potential there to circulate the products into a kind of circular economy.
Yeah, and the beauty of circular economies in general is that they tend to drive deeper relationships with the consumer
Yes.
or customer. So it changes the relationship of that business model towards things like service models and so on,
yes.
where you have products that are designed for serviceability and reuse and end of life recycling and so on. What that means is you're developing a relationship for the long term, not just putting a product in and hoping they buy another one of yours in 15 years time or whatever it is. So it's a fundamentally different approach. What I find interesting about particularly the middle of the supply chain, which I would call ventilation HVAC businesses, is you have a very complex perspective on the built environment because you're kind of middle way through the supply chain. You're not the raw materials, or very often you're not even the components. You're the assemblers and the distributors of a thing. And in that world, you're kind of looking both up the scope pipeline and down the scope pipeline, and there's that wonderful analogy that one person's scope 2 emissions is another person's scope 3 and vice versa. So there are no right and wrongs in the middle of the pipeline. It just depends on what you're talking about. And that even gets all the way down to the transportation of the product. So it's a fascinating place to look at the world of sustainability, is in the middle of that supply chain, isn't it?
Yes, and that's I think that's we are in a transition somewhere. I would definitely lie if I say this is a mature business. We have found the right way to deliver on the expectations regarding circularity. I think we are still very much in a try and error phase because, as you say, there's a beauty with the stakeholder chain in some way because it works, it creates stability. But when you start to be disruptive, when you start to integrate other business models, then you will find it tricky to obtain. There will be new roles coming into play. Take the circularity as an example. We have created a network with large facility owners who are interested in working circular, meaning that when they do a renovation or tearing down a building, in the worst case, almost never happens nowadays, but it could happen, then of course we would like to understand what's in that building that could be reused. Suddenly there needs to be someone who makes an analytic work, more or less inspecting what's there, what is reusable, what has to be material recovered or refurbished. We need to not demolish anything. We need to tear it down and pick things down from roofs or ceilings, or even from cellars that has to be maintained in a certain way. And suddenly there is opening up a new spectra of actors that we need to have, that in some way will compete with the existing stakeholder chain. And that's a very interesting movement. And there is, as you say, there is no right and wrong here, because we don't really know exactly how it will turn out. We don't exactly know if it will look exactly identical everywhere, but it's a change.
Yeah.
So we are really in this kind of change cycle, where someone is very, very keen on jumping on this change kind of cycle, and there will be a lot of people, companies waiting to see what will happen in the end.
And there's disruptors at both ends of the spectrum.
Yes.
You've got disruptors that are dragging the industry forward, and you've got
Yep.
disruptors that are trying to pull it down and hold the status quo. And somewhere in the middle, you're trying to create forward momentum in a way that's
Yes.
healthy. And with your kind of Eurovent hat on, the certification, I know one of the things you're trying to do there is create level playing fields for people, so that consumers and actors within the space have consistency of information when they're going out and trying to assess, because it's in such a dynamic space, it's very hard to compare apples with apples. And that's why the work of organizations like Eurovent is so important, isn't it?
I think it will be, as I say, we're very, very early into this momentum. I was in a dialogue just the other day where we actually talked about how can we even out the playing field, as you say. How can we harmonize rules? I mean, today when you're talking about embodied carbon, normally you present your embodied carbon as an environmental product declaration today. That is the common base. But it's just common base to the name. It varies from different standards. Actually, different EN standard is being used. There are different product category rules, because depending on if you're coming from either side of the industry, which means that in the end we will have a data set that shows the cost, again, the environmental cost. But it's not comparable, because it's done differently. It comes from different calculation methods, etc. And the only thing I hear from the building industry, so to say, the investor side, give us a set of data that we can compare, so we understand if you are better than the other or vice versa. And I said the only thing you cannot do today is doing that, because the harmonization is not done. Luckily, I was in a discussion with the EU commissioning project, where they actually will start to figure out how to harmonize this in the future. The problem is that will take a year or two.
If you're lucky,
both you and me are here and now, and in reality, we needed that answer yesterday. In reality, to drive this change in a controlled way, so that will not happen. But maybe the associations can play a role here, to at least start to harmonize even before the legislators are there in the written words. And I think here especially Eurovent can play a role here, where we are 140 manufacturers together with the same aim to have a healthy HVAC industry in Europe.
Yeah, and it doesn't take much systems thinking to recognize that this is quite complex to do. It's not like we're trying to work out things like the carbon footprint of a square meter of concrete. It's a singular product. You've got electronics and metal and plastics do you take the whole system into account, or do you just do it component by component? How's that tied to energy efficiency? If there's
Yes.
a health implication or a regulation that's different in one part of Europe to another, this stuff's hard, particularly at a systems level, to
Yep.
work your way through. And work was done in the very early days in Europe with certification to try and
Yes.
understand at a very basic level what the carbon footprints were of different system types.
Yep.
But we've progressed now where this is genuinely something that's being looked at manufacturer by manufacturer, component by component. They're slowly picking apart this process and trying to map out what this looks like.
Yeah.
How's that journey gone for Swegon? Like, if you were to tell the story of Swegon's arc of understanding its emissions supply chain, where would you say it's on that arc today, and what kind of things does it have to do next?
Yeah, it's really good good question, and the answer will probably, if I would take the total group into consideration, it will probably a very vague answer. But because even there we have different pace, but we invested quite early into the understanding of embodied carbon in our products, especially our core products, our volume products. And there, I would say we are in a good way. I think the majority of our product has a transparent presentation of the carbon footprint. The challenge that we have taken on is that we invested since maybe 2 years now to understand how circularity would impact us going further on. Maybe I can brag a little bit. We did the first project just a month ago or two, where we actually had the full circular business model in place, a real project, not a pilot, not a proof of concept. It was a real cell of circular air handling units, diffusers, attenuators, and complemented then with the thing that was not on the market as a circular aspects. I think that is the future. I think that this is where we will end up, where we're using a mix of components. Some of them are circular, have been used before and put together again. Some are remanufactured, taking in refurbished, switch something, and some will be newly produced, but with a low CO2 material. And I think that's a fantastic example of how it can actually work, and I strongly believe in that kind of approach. I mean, we can't go full circular because there will not be enough of products that we could feed the market. So it needs, and that's one way the beauty of it, but also the challenge of it, because it will be complex. It can't be easily done. It has to be tailor-made for every project. You need to understand, do we have, for this project in Poland or Germany, have we access to a bank of diffusers or attenuators or whatever we need? And then you need to match it in some way. So I think the good thing is that the manufacturers will play a more important role, even more than today. But the negative part is that we will play a more central role, because it will be very much up to the industry to solve the demand from the investor side.
And that particular project, was that a design philosophy from the beginning on that project, that they wanted
yes,
to achieve
the investor here in this said, okay, I would like, it was a school renovation. They said, we would like to have as low CO2 cost or CO2 footprint as possible in this renovation. So their designer, their installer, and their manufacturer, what can you do? How could a solution look like where you're minimizing the CO2 footprint cost for this project. And I dare to say it didn't become more expensive. I would say maybe it was equal as to a fully new produced installation.
Were there any technical or performance compromises that were needed
In
to
reality,
achieve
not.
that circularity?
No.
So what do you think takes, or what will it take for a market to put itself into a position where that becomes more of a common approach? If you're saying that, and I know it's not always going to be the case across all three, but if you're genuinely saying that, look, we were able to achieve some genuine circularity and transparency on this project across the board at no extra cost, at no real degradation of performance or specification, technical specification, aesthetics or otherwise, it sounds like it's doable genuinely.
It is doable.
What will it take for the market to get to a place where that becomes more of a norm than an outlier?
I think from the experience we have, I think what it takes an investment sector that are interested in lowering the CO2 impact from installations, and especially HVAC in our case, because we can do already today air handling units or diffusers with refurbished steel, or not using or using low CO2 materials in general as a manufacturer. That in reality everyone can do that. It's on the market. It's just a decision. It might be a cost decision, but it's a decision. But to get the circular up and running will not be solely up to the manufacturer side, because we can refurbish products, we can put them on the market again, but we are not the source of products. The source of products is in the hands of the building owner today, making the products available for the market when they dismount them, or making renovations, etc. So it's kind of new. It's a new. In one way, it's a new business model that needs to come into play, where multiple stakeholders become interested in making this happen. It will not drive cost, but it will drive. You need to invest in being open yourself for that alternative, which means that and that's why I tried to explain before, that's suddenly new roles come into play. Even from in reality from all the stakeholder sides, and you need to be open for that to happen, and that's a risk, of course. It's always a risk, and there is a risk that some stakeholders become obsolete in this transition. So there is a kind of there is a mutual agreement that needs to be up and running before this happens. And luckily, we have succeeded in some of our markets to create that kind of mutual agreement and say, okay, this is important for us from all the stakeholder chain, so let's make it happen. But it will not happen if some of the stakeholder chain says no, we are not interested. It's a kind of
it can't be done unilaterally, can it? It's a bit like standards and regulations that have to be.
Yeah, you could drive this. You could drive this with legislation if you would like, and then probably that will of course benefit the transition. But then, if you're using the whip in this case, you need to add the whip with some cost to make it happen. If you're using the carrot instead, and realizing this is a win-win situation, that an embodied carbon cost is a win in the end if we put it as low as possible. The property becomes more valuable, or you have better interest rates for your loans or whatever. Then it will happen more quicker, I think. I don't think you should say either off. Probably you need both.
And it's probably an unfair question to ask you because you've got several hats, obviously, within your role, within your group, and also within your event. But I'm fascinated to ask you whether you think we're getting the balance right between the carrot and the stick at the moment, and if not, what do we need more of?
No, we don't have the balance right for the moment. We have been lucky enough to work with a number of big investors that are enough interested so we can start this business. They are not driven by legislation today at all, in reality, and not in those markets where we have succeeded. There are markets that already have pushed some kind of demands on CO2 footprint per square meters, especially for new build. I know some market like Denmark is talking about having it for renovation as well, and those kind of legislated demands will gain this kind of transition. But in reality, there is no. As said earlier, HVAC has been not on the top priority on the radar for governments and legislators. But I think they're realizing more and more that installation has a huge impact, especially if you're talking renovation. The calculations we have seen from universities and done by yourself is that for a renovation installation, an HVAC can play maybe 40, 50, maybe up to 60 and even more percentage of the carbon footprint cost for this project. Of course, for a new build, it's different. Maybe it's 10, 15%, because then you have the concrete or whatever you need to put there to make it happen. So it's less in that sense. And I think we're still in that. You're still feeling that we are still the margin cost, but we are not if you're starting to calculate on renovation. And based on EU and the Commission decision with the green transition and EPBD now with putting a lot of demand on renovations, and we should increase renovation plans. Of course, the HVAC part or installations in general will become a major part. So I think there is a backlog on understanding. There is a backlog in getting the right drivers in place. And drivers can, from a governmental perspective, be legislative, but they can also be incentives. You have both tools.
Yeah. And I've been on record saying many times that one of the fascinating things about the construction sector is its ability to turn on a dime if a law changes.
Yes.
We've seen that happen over and over again. You can count any number of the areas, from site safety to scaffolding to PPE to whatever, fire safety, all these different things. We've shown an ability over and over again to adopt new ways of working, practices, accounting. It's very doable. Sometimes it requires just a little bit of muscle with the stick to drive the right change, and it's infuriating sometimes, actually, because the industry suddenly turns around and goes, oh, okay then, and gets on with it. And you're like going, I've been asking you to do this for like 20 years, and you've been, no, it's not possible. The industry is going to collapse. It's unfair. And all of a sudden the law comes in, they go, right then, and off they go.
Yes.
And you're like going, what was all the fuss about? So
no, and I think you're right. And I think that's partly because we are quite conservative as an industry. We would like to continue as is, but then we're realizing that something happened. Eco design or whatever comes into play, and of course we adapt. F-gas for refrigerants or whatever.
Yeah, another example.
It's not easy, but it can be done. for sure it
And
can
we
be
were
done.
we were talking before this starts. Like we seem to be perpetually in a world of complete chaos at the moment. So it's just on another list of things to sort out as an industry. It does it, but it probably doesn't even factor halfway up the list in a lot of cases. So it sometimes we've just got to get on with it. It requires legislators to just be a bit brave
Yes.
and say, right, this is the new law. If you're doing it, this is what you've got to do. We're going to give you a bit of time to prepare for it. I don't want to hear the fuss. You've done it plenty of times before in other areas. Get on with it, you know. And
the tricky thing is, because
industry
I totally believe that you are right, and the problem now is probably the political landscape, because I think this transition of working towards sustainability is, I would say, exaggerating a little bit, but quite accepted from an industry point of view. And EPBD comes into play, or should come into play in a month's time in the member states. Quite okay. But then suddenly we got some mixed political signals, and that makes the industry a little bit, I think we are a little bit trembling that we don't really know exactly, should I invest harder in the sustainability journey, or will we see a backlash where some of the regulations that actually already been taken will be reviewed? That is something that we don't like.
No.
I would say
look,
as an industry as a whole.
We're all mature enough to recognize
Yes.
we don't exist in a vacuum, and you know we have a huge affordability problem, we have a huge supply problem when it comes to the built environment. These are enormous drivers, and now we have a huge energy security problem on our hands as well. You know, these are huge macroeconomic challenges that do color things like sustainability. No matter how pro you are, you know, at the end of the day, if you don't have enough houses, if half of the generation in your country can't afford a new home, and those that do have a home can't afford to heat it, you've got big societal challenges on your hand. And all of a sudden sustainability, you know, you have to really, and actually it's been interesting seeing some of the back to basic change of language in the last few months, you know, really back to the basics of fabric first, security, energy sustainability and affordability. You know, you can, you know, that can actually be quite helpful as well, you know, if seen right.
I think you're totally right, and it's totally understandable from a very human centric perspective. The only thing that I think is a little bit missing in this is the sustainability might be an investment for a more long-term perspective, but there is a short-term perspective as well, especially if you're talking sustainability from a circular point of view, from a reuse point of view. The less raw material we need to import, the more we can reuse what's already installed, will come into play from a resilience perspective. The more we can supply ourselves with the product we need, and the resources we need, the better it will be. And that transition is not driving cost. No. It's just a matter of working differently.
Yeah, there's a fundamental truth that you can't control the cost of energy, but you can control how much energy you need.
Yes.
And if you can disassociate yourself from energy need, you can disassociate yourself to quite a large extent from rising and falling energy costs. So there are some fundamentals there that just make perfect sense.
And I mean the transition from heating up our main heat source is still gas, natural gas in Europe, and of course that's, I can fully understand the transition that we need to do. I think everyone can understand that. The problem, or it's not a problem, maybe the challenge is that we while we're struggling to survive or kind of handle the chaos situation that we are in, we still need to keep more than one thought in our head, and you can still be resilient, you can still be smart and effective, and still develop the market and the industry that we work in. We don't need to back down to what we did 10 years ago, because we can do it differently and still achieve the goals that we would need to do because of the chaotic world around us.
Yeah,
And I think
and it's
that is the challenge that I understand is tricky, but that is what I expect as both as an industry kind of representative, but also as a citizen of the union.
yeah, and there's a beautiful synergy in a way. I was smiling when you said, we're trying to convince people that some of these benefits are very long term, that but worth it. And I was smiling that ain't that the truth with ventilation in general. We're always trying to convince people that not
Yeah.
only from the energy perspective, but also from the health perspective, that these are investments that are quite esoteric and long-term in nature, and
Yes.
quite hard to convince people to do the right thing now. So we pick a hell of an industry to work in, that we're constantly trying to convince people to do the right thing now for something that
true.
might not affect them for another 20 years,
No, and that and the challenge is that if you're doing the right thing now, it will not affect you at all. You will live and thrive. You don't even know what sicknesses or health issues you would have if you
Yeah.
if you haven't invested in the right thing. So that's
I was having this conversation with somebody the other day. We were talking about how you retain the value when what you do removes the perception of the gap.
mm,
So if you create an amazing performing space, after a while people's expectation is that that's just the way it is.
yes.
And so so if you have a business model that's based, as I was talking, I think it was a sensor company I was talking to, and I was saying, like, the challenge for you, like selling air quality sensors, is if every time somebody looks at the air quality sensor it's green, after about 2 years they're not going to look at the air quality sensor
No,
anymore, or the
it's true.
dashboard. So you by doing the right thing, you lose the value of the proposition you've put in front of them
Yeah.
after a while. So it's a strange space to, particularly for, and as we were talking earlier, as you transition into this kind of less one-dimensional and more two or three-dimensional business relationship with people, where it's about ongoing value. We have to get better at describing that value, visualizing that value for people, so that they do understand that the reason everything's okay is because of all the work that's going on behind the scenes
Yes.
to make it okay, right?
Absolutely.
How does a business like Swegon maintain a North Star in 2026? What's your kind of 2030, 2050? I mean, I've got to stop using 2030 soon, because it's going to be next year.
It's very
right?
very quick.
Yeah, but what does a North Star look like for a company like
But
yours now?
that's it's actually a super hard question to answer. But I can maybe imagine myself somewhere on the line there. I will of course not work 2050. I will be probably retired since many years. But somewhere my whole quest, starting in this business 2007, somewhere on the line, and was in the building automation industry before that, is that we ultimately should be recognized as something that is uh, you're touching in a little bit to it before, as a kind of hygienic expectation that of course we need an indoor climate that has the right preferences. If I can get everyone to at least understand that there are important stuff that you actually breathe in every breath you take, and you can actually in one way affect that. If that is happening now, it's a very philosophical answer on your question, but there is something there that we you touched into that, the kind of monetary conversion of what we do. The effect what we do is, might be today that you don't have headache, but if I don't have headache, I don't see the problem. So we are creating the worst scenario by delivering the better and better products in reality, our systems. But I think that we will anyway come to an end. I mean, I can hear people talking about that they understand that the outdoor air is polluted. I'm living close to a road. Okay, then I now know that my outdoor conditions might not be the best. I'm going back to my private life. I had a dialogue with my neighbors the other week because they got we live in a quite new built apartment building where all the walls are white, but some of the walls are not white anymore. They have grayish shades in the corners. And then everyone started to complain, but they don't know what to complain about. In reality, it's clear. We have a bad indoor climate. We bring particles into the apartments that actually are visible on the walls. But the people doesn't have the tool today to transfer that knowledge to something that is tangible. Because the answer should of course be, okay, we have a problem. We have bad indoor air. We actually can visualize that on the walls. Okay, what do we need to do? We need to install purifiers. We might need to refurbish the ventilation systems to make sure that this doesn't happen. But the tools are not there. It's not common understanding to realize that the bad outdoor condition could be a bad indoor condition. There is not an equality between that. And if I could retire somewhere, would be when people actually realizing, shit, we need to change filters, or we need to step up here because we cannot live in this. We can easily see the particles on the walls. We need to do something. But that kind of, you don't draw that conclusion yet.
No, that's the challenge. You know, when the general public can't articulate the risk.
No, but they can do it outside, which is very strange. I'm driving a car. It's American brand. Starts with a T, and that car indicates when I'm driving if the outdoor conditions are bad. But it doesn't say anything about the indoor conditions in the car. But it's always say, okay, you have a bad outdoor condition. Now maybe we start to recircle air for a while. You are queuing with your car. So there are a lot of inputs about how the outdoor conditions are, but it's super few who actually transfers that to the situation that you actually are. I'm inside the car. I would rather see how is the inside conditions of this car. Do I need to be worried? But anyway, it's an interesting way that we actually publish the outdoor conditions, and I mean nowadays in Sweden we are in the spring phase. The pollen prognosis are in the magazines from day to day. You know exactly the percentage of birch and grass or whatever. And there people start to take, they read it and they say, okay, I need probably to take some allergic medicines today because the situation is different. Yes, good. I strongly support this. But we still forget what happens inside.
Yeah, and I've been trying to verbalize this quite a bit recently. One of the things I was trying to do in the book that I was writing was articulate this idea that we have a fundamental societal construct with buildings that Maslow's hierarchy of needs. They have
Yeah,
a principal
exactly.
purpose
Yeah.
of protecting us from
Yes.
the environment, right? And whether that's rain or wind or cold or heat or whatever it is,
Yep.
and that should include air quality.
Another example, just to give you an example, there was a Finnish study published just a couple of weeks in the Nordic papers about schools and students, and during spring, that pollen actually affects the performance of tests in general the performance. So the conclusion was we need to move the exams and the test from spring to autumn. There was not even a single row saying what is the indoor condition in the classrooms where they do the exams and the tests. Do we still have teachers who opens up the windows just before the test to let the fresh air coming in? So even in research, we are not even considered that. Of course, you need to go to school and you can be affected, but maybe if we have a controlled indoor air quality, this could be reduced. But I think we still have behaviors that actually raises those kind of potential positive effects, even in modern classrooms today, because we don't know exactly what to do. We don't understand exactly what we are playing with tools we are using.
No, and yet we've never been in a better position to know that with the
No,
development of low-cost sensors. We can visualize
absolutely.
the air
We are
we breathe
measuring
and
everything
both.
more or less all the time.
I'll have you back to the podcast in just a minute. I just wanted to briefly tell you about Eurovent Certified Performance from Eurovent Certification, a partner of the podcast. We all know HVAC systems play a vital role in improving indoor air quality. However, there is a risk that some products may not live up to expectations. Even the best installed and maintained HVAC equipment can underperform if data used to specify products and design systems is incorrect. Consequences can include poor indoor air quality, increased energy consumption, increased maintenance, system failure, and non-compliance with regulations, and that's bad for everyone. However, there is a way to ensure products perform as advertised and deliver good sustainable indoor environments. Selecting products holding Eurovent certified performance ensures that the manufacturer data has been independently and impartially verified. Eurovent certification's stringent certification process not only guarantees product performance, but energy efficiency too. I met some of the Eurovent certification team back in January at the Indoor Air Quality Matters conference and was seriously impressed with what they're trying to do. Their core aim is to create transparency in the industry by making certified data freely available. This means you can directly compare the performance of products to make informed decisions. Their certified product directory holds vital information on everything from air handling units to air filters. So don't take a chance on unverified products. Trust in proven performance. Details, as always, in the show notes at airqualitymatters.net and at Eurovent Certification. That's www.eurovent-certification.com. Now, back to the podcast. Yeah, things have changed enormously.
Yeah. So this is maybe my overarching goal somewhere, that we could eventually get a common understanding that I mean, I'm not out that everyone need to have a ventilation system or an air purifier or whatever, but at least understand that I saw another study from Denmark studying the sleep quality in bedrooms, and then it was not pollen, it was not particles, it was CO2 levels. How many parents are sleeping in a non-ventilated bedroom and closes the door towards the rest of the house or the apartment, during the night, and probably achieve a CO2 level that is quite unhealthy in the majority part of the sleeping hours. But we don't know what conclusion we should draw. We don't know where we should see risks, because no one have actually told us in the end.
No.
And there is no demands, and there is no legislation back to that again.
Yeah, I think there's a huge case for a much stronger public health campaigning on this, that there isn't the awareness that we have around tobacco or carbon monoxide or road traffic safety and so on. There was some great work done by Ben Jones and Max Sherman from Nottingham and LBNL. We had them on the podcast talking about harm, and translating the harm of indoor air quality into DALYs, which is a metric for public health. And
that's an interesting way to do it.
Yeah, and it became clear from that work, that the cost per 100,000 of the population for smoking is about 2,600 or 2,800 days per 100,000 of the population.
Yeah.
Years lost per 100,000.
Exactly.
For indoor air quality, it's 2,200. So it's nearly equivalent to smoking. It's twice as much as alcoholism or road traffic deaths.
Yeah.
So we can monetize this problem for the public. It's a significant issue, but we don't have. If you look at road traffic safety with bollards and lights and markers and seat belts and roundabouts, and the list goes on and on and on and on. Just trying to bring those 1,200 DALYs down, right?
Yes, exactly.
And we're spending nowhere near that money on safety and awareness on something that's killing twice as many people. No. It's an amazing statistic, really. So it shows we've got a long way to go.
Yeah, but that is probably what frustrates me, because the figures are there, the research are there. I mean, both from lost lives to performance losses to kind of medical kind of just issues, but even based on that, we cannot really make it tangible. That's the problem, and in reality, it's the problem is that I mean, both you and me has spoken many times around this subject, I suppose, but when we start to talk to an investor, for example, if I have the opportunity to talk to an investor, they can be quite interested in this kind of discussion and understand the kind of backbone of the discussion. But in reality, it's not them who benefits from the investment. For those persons, it's a cost. To invest in a high quality system, or maybe have a measurement systems in every room, all those tools that will help. Yes,
conundrum. The person that pays isn't the one that benefits.
No, exactly. They will, in one way, they will benefit, because they will probably could see some wins in happy tenants or tenants that doesn't complain that much as traditional. So there are short-term wins as well, but this more society wins is super hard to actually convince that investment.
Yeah. Explain to me, how do you describe someone who is a future solutions and public affairs representative for a ventilation company? What is that job?
How do you actually match those two? How do we match those roles? Yeah, I haven't seen anyone having that title more than me. So in that sense, I'm a little bit proud. And it deserves an explanation. And it seems that it could be two different roles. In many ways, actually, they are building each other. If I start with the easy one, the public affairs part, where my engagement in your event is placed, and where we actually trying to, in many ways lobby for the change we would like to see in legislation or guides or practices. That is quite straightforward in that sense. My main public affairs roles is within the different associations in Europe and North America. So we have your event, we have REVA in Europe, and we have ASHRAE in North America. This is probably where I spend most of my time regarding public affairs, except driving together with my colleagues, writing some blogs, writing some debate articles, and cooperate with industry in other forums. So that's a relatively easy, and that goes back to the previous discussion. What is the purpose of what we are doing? So this is where I'm using the purpose, trying to convince political representatives that they don't understand what we're talking about. For example,
Yeah.
which is interesting. I seldom end up in an uninterested audience. They are normally quite interested, but they don't understand what they should do with the information. That is the trick. So there where probably I'll spend my public affairs part. The future solution part is another. It goes with the same theme, of course, to understand how would the future need look like regarding HVAC, indoor climate, indoor air quality, indoor environmental quality. We are a company that is big enough to have quite high investment in research and development, research and innovation. We, of course, are developing our portfolio all the way, everything from physical product to digital services. What we realized was that no matter how good we are on that, it will always be based on the technology that we are currently knowing about. So it could be replacing raw material to something more sustainable. It's a nice move from an R&D perspective. But if we will like to talk that maybe it is not that product that will be the product that solves the task in 10 years time, then we probably need another process. We need to be more less connected to the portfolio we have. We will meet a lot of fantastic and crazy persons that have the most magnificent ideas. We need to find a way of structured processing those ideas to understand actually what will be the golden nugget going further on. What will be the cooperation, could it be, that actually enhances our product portfolio or our offering towards customers. And what startup company will be the new Swegon in 20 years? So we have said, okay, let's not challenge our great colleagues that works with innovation regarding their portfolio responsibilities. Let's put this as a group initiative. So there is a department which I lead that takes these connections into play, makes a first kind of evaluation, and start up a dialogue. And we normally say that there is no preconditions from our side. We are in the first meetings, we are open to just listen and to trying to understand what is the value in what you are actually telling us. Either it's a product development or services or a business idea or whatever. There is no boundaries in what we can listen to. And there is in reality no boundaries what we can do together either. Eventually it will along the process carves out, of course, where is the win-win situation somewhere on the line. But the ambition is to be curious, to be on our toes, and realizing that the industry might not look like the industry looks today if we're looking, and not 2030 then, because 2030 is, as you say, close, but maybe 35 or 40, 10 years from now. It might be different. It might look, the demands might be served in another way.
And at a high level, what are some of the things that are surfacing? I'm guessing, you know, there's the obvious ones like AI, right? That I think that's intertwining
Yes.
into almost every facet of business and service provision. But are there other things? Is most of this kind of in out? So is this people within the organization, you looking at ideas and product ideation?
No, it's mostly external.
Or is this out in external?
It's mostly external. Of course, we are working with some internal kind of cases as well, but I would say like 90-10 out, external taken, inspirational part. And if you just holistic, it would explain it. Of course, a lot of the digitalization and AI, but quite hands-on actually. It's really those cases we are in contact with is quite direct to the point. This is where we will change things. This is what we will offer. So it's kind of step 2 in the AI transformation.
Yeah.
So
what's the design thinking behind this? Is this quite kind of Scrum thinking and fail quickly thinking, where you come in, you hit a problem hard, work it through the mill, and see what comes out the other side? Or is this stuff you're looking at quite strategically and gently?
It's much more strategically than short-term solving. In reality, if we find solutions that are quite quickly adaptable or quickly integrated, we actually normally transfer it to our R&D site that fits best, because then we can utilize the value directly from both sides. This will be more strategic, more I wouldn't say disruptive, maybe more complementary to how the market looks like. It could be disruptive as well, saying, okay, why are you doing it this way? It could be much better this way. And that's a goal, not because there is it's super easy to say this will never work. But we don't say this will never work. We say, tell us why this will work, and try to convince us that so we understand why this will be better than doing this in another way, or the traditional way. It doesn't mean that the idea is fantastic or disruptive. It might be there are some issues that needs to be clarified. But
sometimes it's the little things that change the world, right?
Yes, and I think that's probably the learning so far, that there is very few cases that will turn the world upside down, but there is a lot of cases that will make our HVAC industry a little bit smarter, a little bit more efficient, a little bit better designed, or whatever it could be. And hopefully, by opening these kind of doors, we will also attract companies that is not immediately thinking of HVAC or indoor climate as a core, but they realizing there is someone who is willing to listen, and even if this is a little bit out of the box thinking, because otherwise it's a huge risk that we will continue as is forever, without, and just slightly adjusting our way of doing things. So So sustainability is a big part. Digitalization is a big part. Energy efficiency is a big part.
Yeah. Is
So
there
far.
and without giving away the secret sauce, is there stuff on your horizon that kind of is tweaking your interest at the moment? I mean, for example, we see in North America, ASHRAE, there's a real focus this year now on indoor environmental quality health, so
Yeah.
tying health into indoor environmental quality. Indoor environmental quality, so ventilation not sitting in an echo chamber, that it's part of a greater acoustic, thermal comfort, lighting picture. There's those kind of dynamics. There's some interesting kind of bigger picture shifts you can see, I guess, from your position.
I think we can still see. I mean, the most people has forgotten that we were in a pandemic. Not forgetting that we were in a pandemic, but the effects on the pandemic has been kind of a little bit blurry for most people. But not the innovators. They have realized that there is something that we can do better in different ways. So there are some kind of connections to resilience, to health aspects, and this kind of air quality kind of thinking, and that has clearly a link to yeah, of course, health in general, but more the resilience part. And then we're coming back to the discussion that we more or less had before, how important is indoor air quality, etc., etc. And this might be a way towards that we actually can work with indoor climate in another way, and maybe we can. As I said before, very, very quickly, I think we have one of the problem we have is that we don't have a way to describe what we're actually talking about. Indoor climate is not a common word for the most people. Indoor air quality, definitely not, and IEQ or indoor environmental quality, no one understands except the people in the pond, so to speak.
Yeah.
But everyone understands you don't get sick. Everyone understands.
Yeah.
We will erase the flu from this building. That is a relatable dialogue. That's an example.
Yeah, you'd hope, and actually, you see the US actually with the ARPA-H program has been interesting to see, where they've invested quite heavily into resilience from a biological perspective. Partly post-pandemic, but partly for biosecurity reasons. It's interesting to see a level of investment going in there, and so that seems to be at the cutting edge of sensor design and thinking around buildings. So that's fascinating. Yes. I was going to ask, do you have an interest in the kind of interoperability of buildings as well? Buildings are increasingly becoming complex systems, and how your systems interact with other systems. Is that kind of part of your remit as well?
That's a part of what I'm looking into, or we as a department, and of course, this is a general task that it's not just. It might be closer in time than 10 years in many ways. So we are working on that in multiple arenas, I would say. But this is one of the tasks that I think the industry need to solve going further. I'm a little bit worried about this kind of dialogue where I can hear the signals that investors, facility management company says we need to bring down the complexity of the systems because it will be hard for us to maintain them. I can understand the kind of conclusion, and I think I understand what they mean, because it's I mean, if I have 2 sensors in the building, or if I have 200 sensors in the building, the complexity is enormous, comparable. Then we need to understand how do we, because the 200 sensors is not just because there is a manufacturer that would like to sell something, or an installer that would like to install something. They are providing value, kind of a temperature or CO2 values or whatever value, sound. The problem is that, of course, the demand we are putting on the facility management or the investors or building owners is increasingly complex to understand what conclusions should I draw by reading 200 sensors. How should I act on those? And there, I think we, and much more than 10 years ahead, need to solve that the systems themselves gives the recommendation. And there we need to use AI or machine learning or these tools.
Or develop the systems and structures to understand the value of that kind of data. I mean, I often talk about the automobile industry in that sense.
Yep.
You know, the mechanics were complaining decades ago that cars were becoming more electronic and less serviceable, and you know, the days of checking the gaps on your distribution cap and servicing the car yourself are a long distant memory for many of us. You know, the first thing I bought with my first car was a set of ramps so that I could fix it, right?
Exactly.
We were of a certain age, you and I suspect, in that regard.
Yeah.
But the world's very different now. But that data, that value of that data and the structures and the data streams are incredibly important to understanding how vehicles run and operate and perform over time and iterate. And so I always give the example of data from a car, because the user's perspective from a car is that you get a very simple red flashing light, or if it's a more modern car, a text on your screen that says you need to service your oil, right?
Yes,
so
exactly.
You can present data in a very simple way. Underlying that could be 35 sensors that are checking oil viscosity and pump friction and a whole range of stuff that you have no idea. Even the mechanic doesn't really understand the intricacies of those sensor algorithms, but what he knows is that he gets told that pump number 3, part number X, needs servicing in 10,000 kilometers. So he now gets presented with information that enables him to do his job and diagnose much more efficiently. The manufacturer, behind the scenes, is A and B profiling different oil pumps, checking which one lasts longer, has huge amounts of data to improve that vehicle through iterations. And what we end up with as a product at the other side, frankly, is at least 50 years ahead of where the building industry is in its complexity. But from a user's delivery perspective, we get an incredibly well working vehicle that, yes, is a million times more complex than the car you and I first bought when we were 16, 17, but nonetheless is safer, more efficient, better to drive in many cases, you know, and so on and so forth. There's a lot we can learn in the building industry, I think, about that interoperability, that it's, you know, many of those parts come from different suppliers, have different functions. Yes, the ownership model is different. It's one vehicle manufacturer. It has a brand and a client base that desires that type of vehicle. But we can learn a lot, I think.
But I totally agree with you. And I mean, using your analogy further on, I even in my new car doesn't even bother to read about service intervals or whatever, because I expect the car to tell me when it needs to be serviced or fixed. And as you say, we are miles from that regarding building industry, but I think we need to go there, because in reality I mean there is a contradiction here, because we are a company that supplies well-functioning products, but are more and more delivering system and solutions for a building. The only thing we know by fact is that the product doesn't run, or the system doesn't run as effective as it could be done when it's installed. It could be better and it can be worse, but it could be optimized. It could always be a little bit smarter in reality. And then we can say, okay, then we need to educate everyone who installs, who runs the products and the systems, and of course we should do that, but we need to help them. We need to help them to understand. If you have 1,000 sensors in the building, of course, it's much better that the system says, okay, I have seen over this week that this room start to consume more heat loads or cooling loads, or are not occupied at all 95% of the time. I suggest that we do this, that we adjust settings, or you might need to check this sensor because it shows different values than everyone else. I mean, we need to help the people running the systems to, they need to be competent, and they need to understand what they read, but they should be helped, of course. And in the best way, even the system optimize itself and say, okay, I have adjusted this because I saw this is happening, and by adding this figure, we can see that the air volume is much more calmer or whatever. Over the
And for
2 days.
facilities companies in particular, and it's a very odd industry, facility management, but it's one of those sectors that really should be moving towards a zero lights model, where the idea is to have zero failures in a building, to be proactive across all measures of the building, so that there isn't a red light failure, But most of that industry is reactive, and by nature, it waits for something to start making a noise or rattling or failing before.
But then it's too late. You have 10 complaints until it actually fails. That takes time, and it really makes lives hard for everyone. The tenants, the facility engineers, it might even be a bad situation for the owner, because the tenants, managers start to complain. I mean, all these situations, they cannot be avoided, but things happens in buildings, and even the human factor are interfering from time to time. But we need to take the next level in smartness, because if we're going the other way, let's go back to basic, then we will not achieve the energy efficiency targets. Then we will lose the fight, because no one would like to buy the cars, or maybe that's wrong explanation, but hope let's pretend at least no one would like to buy the cars we did when we were 16, 17 years old, because everyone realizes the car from 2026 is much better, it's much more clever, uses less energy, are much smoother and comfortable to drive.
Yeah, at the very least, I might want to drive stick shift, but I do quite I do quite like ABS and an airbag, right?
Yeah,
and maybe
exactly.
something that brakes for me if I'm
No,
not.
but I can drive my old car anyway because I like it, and it's a cabriolet during the summer. But I would never use it as my major car.
Yeah, true. From your perspective, do you kind of look at the skills landscape at all in what you do? I mean,
Yeah.
because a large part of the success of the product is the ability for that product to be designed, installed, and managed and operated correctly. So the skills landscape, I guess, both from within Swegon but also within Eurovent, must be a huge part of your kind of landscape, I guess.
This is tricky, because there are so many elements in that question. I mean, we tend to, from an installation point of view, have quite good control of who is doing the installation, or the startup of a product or a system, and then we can invest in that kind of capability. But then it comes a service guy 2 years later on, or or we are lucky if there's a facility management company, because then we can invest in a facility management company. Normally, it's someone in the building owner's organization that also have responsibility for the operational part of the building. That we have no idea who that person is, and it could also change quite quick, which means that there probably there is a challenge and there a gap somewhere where it will be from building owner's perspective, it will be very quickly making sure that there is cleaners contracted, the lines are working as they're expected to be, because they're very visual, all these things. But when you come to indoor climate and ventilation, it sad to say, but it demands another level of understanding. It's suddenly just not twisting a temperature sensor in a room that makes lives good. There are so many elements that could be affecting the well-being, or that you have the right temperature, or that the air volume is correctly balanced, or whatever. So, and that's tricky. And I don't really have the answer how to solve that in a more wide perspective. My only answer is that I strongly believe that what I said before, we need to make the system smart. So even if you don't have competence, you should understand what I can do if I'm doing something wrong, and maybe where my competence is lacking, where I need to call for experts, because I don't understand why this is saying this kind of recommendation.
Yeah, interesting. One final question for you. If we were sitting down in 2031 having another conversation, what's the one thing that you wish we weren't talking about in 2031, either because you're fed up talking about it at this stage, and if you're still talking about it in 2031, something's gone wrong, or that we fixed something, that we've put that to bed. It's doesn't have to be spoken about anymore. It's just a given. Is there anything on your list that you'd quite like not to have to be talking about?
If I can wish, and this is a little bit sensitive, but if I can wish, I mean, all what we have talked about so far is super important for me. Everything from recognition, visualization, everything of this. But if I can wish for something that in 5 to 10 years time would be different, that I wish that we will not get stuck in the chain of command and stakeholder situation that we are in present, because it hinders us to really doing the transition. And with that said, we are depending on each other as it is. Manufacturers, designers, architects, installers, service technicians, everyone is a link in the chain. And I believe that the chain need to be there, but for the moment, this chain is hindering us from development. I said in an interview just a half year ago, and when we talked about the architects' roles and in what we are doing and how we in the HVAC in general, that it's not the weakest part that is the problem in our chain. It's the strongest part that is the problem in our chain, because that's hindering the development. Without pointing finger anyway, because the strongest link could be maybe us. I don't know, but we this is so boring actually, that we are in and it looks exactly the same wherever you're moving yourself in Europe, at least.
Yeah, but there's a beautiful tension there as well. I think that it is that kind of trope that if you let the engineers design the building, you'd end up with a building that's not very aesthetical. If you let
Yes.
the architects design the building, you'd end up with a building that doesn't work very well.
Let's get rid of the sub-optimization. Let's look at the bigger picture and see. And going back to a little bit where we started, the kind of transition from sustainability, the circular transition is breaking up this, but it also it demands mature stakeholders that are willing to move themselves out of the comfort zone, and that if that could happen in 5 years' time, I would be super happy.
Well, on that note, I think we'll end it. Mikael, it's been absolutely brilliant talking to you. I've been really looking forward to this conversation ever since we lined it up. So
absolutely.
Thanks a million for joining me this afternoon. It's been absolutely
Thanks for letting me be here. Yeah.
Thanks for listening. Before you go, can I ask a favour? If you like this show and can think of other people that might like it too, please do spread the word and let's keep building this community. If you can check 5 stars, I'd really appreciate that. Apparently, it really helps with the reach on some of these platforms that you're listening to it on. And of course, like and subscribe if that's possible too. Do check out our YouTube channel. There's plenty going on over there as well. These episodes are not possible without our sponsors, so thanks a million to Particles Plus, Eurovent, ACO and Farmwood. Without them, this just simply is not possible.